Disgruntled municipality workers at the City of Tshwane have suspended their strike action for now. The Municipal Workers Union SAMWU and the city have begun discussions on salary increases at the bargaining council, and workers are demanding an 18% wage hike. And this week they used buses and trucks to block roads in the capital. And to tell us more about what is happening and the latest with regard to this impasse, we're joined by Tshwane's Acting Mayor Abel Tau. Mr. Tau, thanks so much for joining us here on Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and thank you for having us.
Mr. Tau, we saw this week major streets blocked, filth everywhere across the city, people starting to complain about the stench that caused, and motorists not being able to enter the city at certain stages. So how did the strike affect business and service delivery over this week in the capital?
Look, Sakina, the strike was obviously an unwelcome situation in the capital. Businesses at very close to where the issues were, or where the striking workers were, came to a halt, as well as people's lives were interrupted due to the fact that they could not access the city, and some people could not go to work and stuff like that, which is unfortunate, and it would be bemoaned. But look, at the end of the day, as a city, I think we have recovered well. We have managed to restore law and order with the assistance of SABC and JMPD due to the nature and the size of the challenge that we are faced with. And as things stand, we have cleaned up even last night with what was escalated, and we are at the bargaining council, which is what we have always been advocating for. We had always been saying to SAMWU, let's go to the correct chamber where we need to be having a conversation around these issues, and we are open to negotiation.
So speaking of negotiations, how are those wage negotiations progressing at this stage?
I am confident that we can close the deal today because the parties have gone very much closer. Like I had committed to say, I am very much of the opinion that we need to try and find a speedy resolution to the issue, because there is no one who is winning at the end of the day when this impasse is here. Like you correctly said, services are affected, and people's lives are being disrupted, and we cannot afford this, especially in this economic time. So I am alive to the realities of South Africa, and I wouldn't want to hold the lives of South Africans, especially residents of Tshwane, at ransom. So I have instructed our team to negotiate in good faith and to negotiate hard to make sure that we finally break the impasse, and I think that will happen today.
Well, what does that mean? Because we understand that the city is offering workers a 6.5% wage hike, whereas some 64 managers were offered 18% increase. And the workers are, of course, demanding at this stage that they want to see the same sort of adjustment and the same rate of salary hike. So explain to us exactly what happened there.
Look, what happened there, and I think it needs to be put into perspective, is that Tshwane has categories of managers. You have Section 56 managers and non-Section 56 managers. Now, all of these managers at some point were contract workers or were total cost to company, which had meant that they had a fixed contract. Fast forward, in 2016, there was a decision made to absorb some of these managers and make them permanent in order for us to avoid a brain drain. And subsequent to that, we also now had an upgrade in the municipality to a grade 10 municipality. And for that reason, there is a gazetted salary structure in terms of the Section 56 managers. Unfortunately, Section 56 managers that had become permanent were also now falling into this bracket. And what happened was there was a negotiations on whether or not they should have benefits or they would have total cost to company. What then happened was a agreement was reached to then say they would forfeit benefits and they would be at a total cost to company, which brings them into the correct bracket according to the government gazette. What needed to happen with that is that needed to have been taken to the bargaining council for ratification. Unfortunately, that's the step that was omitted in implementing this deal. And unfortunately, that triggered triggered a situation where employees in Tshwane had felt that they also then, because we paid a section of people who are in the bargaining unit 18%, therefore they also deserve the same. And I have always maintained that I do not believe that that is the case, because if there is a perception that a mistake was made somewhere and we have paid people what was not due to them, the corrective action cannot be that then let's escalate the situation and make another mistake and pay others as well. The correction should be, and SAMWU as a responsible stakeholder should have said to us, we have picked up something that we think shouldn't have happened, and then we should have gone onto the table to say, how do we remedy the situation? And my take is that the remedy should have always been to deal with where the problem is and not create another problem elsewhere and say we pay people. And I have been standing firm on a matter of principle to say two wrongs will never make a right. But even with that, I had always said we will not enter into negotiations and make deals in a cafe somewhere. We need to go to the bargaining council, because that body is a body duly authorized to intervene on matters of wages.
Mr. Tau, I'm listening to you and it sounds as though you are shifting the blame, because I need to ask you at this stage, do you accept any responsibility for what has gone on here this week? You say that you omitted to take this particular deal to the bargaining council for ratification. So why did that happen? Why did you miss that step in the process?
Look, Sakina, at all times we will always take responsibility. Unfortunately, taking responsibility means that we have mechanisms to remedy any challenge that we face. And I don't think that an illegal strike is one. I have always maintained that whenever we needed to have a conversation around these matters, we should have had a conversation around these matters. And unfortunately, we have identified where the glitches were, and we will obviously take corrective action like we have said. And look, at the end of the day,
this is what I'm asking you, Mr. Tau. That's what I'm asking you about. Why? How did that glitch happen? What was the reason for that oversight? The reason for that oversight, Sakina, obviously there are processes within how things are done, and it is a pure administrative issue. When it gets to MACO and a MACO resolution has been made, as well as a council resolution is made, then there is the administrative arm that takes over and runs with all these processes. Unfortunately, we run oversight, so we're not involved at every step of the way. We do oversight, and we have done our part as politicians. I think administratively we needed to do what we needed to do. But at the end of the day, I think that the issue here is neither there nor here. The most important issue here is that when the issue was picked up, we were there as politicians, open to negotiation and look at how we remedy the situation. Unfortunately, SAMWU did not want to come to the table. There is another party in Tshwane, the biggest union is IMATU, and they've come to the table, and we have engaged and continue to engage to resolve these issues. And hence I'm saying my stance had always been that we are open to negotiate and make sure that we find solutions to whatever challenge that we find ourselves in. Okay, before I speak to what is currently happening, so you found out in your oversight role that processes were not properly followed. Was there any sanction against those who were responsible for that breach?
Yes, there is action that has been taken, and obviously part of which is what I had reported to say we have also met the 64 senior managers that have been paid in order for us to find a way forward even on that. And hence I'm saying, and I had maintained to some and everyone, to say these are two separate issues. The issue of the payment is being dealt with in a manner that seeks to find a proper and lasting solution, and consequence management will ensue, and we have already started with that, to identify where the problem started and ensure that we rectify that as well. But coming to the issue of now the demand of the 18%, I think it's misplaced, and that is the point that we have always tried to put through to the employees of Tshwane, to say we have heard you and we have seen that as management things may have not gone the way they should have in the first place, and we take full responsibility. But with that, we are also going to go further and ensure that we put remedial steps to ensure that this does not happen again in the future.
So what are those remedial steps, and why is it that you didn't anticipate that it would lead to this sort of action? If you are giving a management two-digit increases and then come down to lower level workers and give them single-digit increases, surely you would have anticipated that that would be a cause of concern and there would be trouble that arose from that.
Sakina, if we can take you through what has happened, basically, we did not anticipate that should be happening, and I do not believe that this should be happening. We have agreements in place. We have a collective agreement. We have gone through wage negotiations and have implemented increases with the unions. That was agreed at the SALGA Bargaining Council. So this is not a wage negotiation season. And unfortunately, the steps that were taken in the situation that precipitated this were as a result of a process that the city was undergoing a change in terms of its categorization. So obviously this is at an implementation phase, and for that reason you always would then play oversight and look at the steps that are taken and check. And SAMWU also, as a role player in the city, has a responsibility to assist us and work with us in running the city, because they are an important role player. And hence I'm saying with that, we have picked up that there are issues, we have separated the issues, and we are dealing with this issue decisively. Similarly, there was no need for SAMWU to go to the streets, because one, the issues are being dealt with, and secondly, we are listening to what the demands that they have put forth, and we were going to find one another without the need for all of us to disrupt lives. And I think we need to, as South Africans, get to a point where we can trust our processes and the bodies that are put in place to be able to function and bring us into a point where we find one another. And that is what we have been appealing for, that we will come to the table, let's go and put remedies that are there in law.
But you will appreciate, Mr. Tau, that cuts both ways. And once again, this seems like another instance of politicians not understanding the importance of perception, because the perception that you are creating is that as a city, you care more about those in the upper echelons of your municipal structure. We're talking here about managers who earn between 2 million and 3.1 million, them getting an 18% increase, and then you have workers who earn around 5,000 Rand per month, they getting a 6.5% increase. Now, I've heard your explanation, but again, you are failing to understand that the perception that this creates is not a very good one, and therefore you would have people going out on the streets on strike. Mr. Tau?
Sakina, I missed you at the end, but I think I got most of what you were asking. Yes, obviously 90% of life's reality is perception, and that perception needs to be a correct perception. And unfortunately at this stage, it might be that there is a perception that is being created, that we are a city that does not care about the people at the lower echelons of our structures or of our administration, but that is not the case. Hence, I will always maintain that upon us doing our oversight and picking up that there was an omission somewhere, we immediately flagged some of these things and we've put steps in place to remedy this. Unfortunately, is that our partners on the other side have jumped to go to the street. Hence, if we were to follow the prescripts of the law, we would have had a situation where we were gone to the table with SAMWU and Imatu and ensured that we bring this issue to the bargaining council where it belongs and had these conversations. But on the one hand, like I said, there had already been steps taken to remedy the situation or that precipitates this. So yes, at the end of the day, as a city, we will decisively act where there would have been instances where there were omissions, and that is exactly what we are doing.
Yeah, but of course, one cannot help but see here some of the discrepancies in terms of how you are acting in this instance. You are talking about SAMWU and how you expect them to do the right thing, go to the bargaining council, yet by your own admission, you failed to go to the bargaining council when you needed to have that 18% increase ratified at some stage. But in the interest of time, I need to move on, and I want to ask you about the outgoing city manager, Mr. Mweke Meketsi Masala. So he apparently is staying on, and there's also unhappiness with the council's decision to allow a 7.5 million rand payout for Mr. Masala to step down. Please talk to us about that. Why was he asked to stay on further? And also, how did you arrive at the amount to pay him?
Sakina, first and foremost, the amount that is bandied around in the media, unfortunately, I don't know where those figures come through. I don't think anyone at this stage is privy to the contents of that contract in terms of rands and cents. I also don't have that information. But it's safe to say Dr. Meketsi Masala's salary is 2.4 million per year. And the council resolution had said we are paying the remainder of his contract. Now, some of these figures that are bandied around in the media, I don't know where do people get those, and I doubt very much that those figures are correct. But I wouldn't want to enter into a space where we talk, because ethically we should, that's a matter between Dr. Masala and the employer, in this case the city.
Well,
and
not entirely, Mr. Tau, because we're talking about public representatives here, and you told us what his salary is. And if you're telling us that the media is getting this figure wrong, then surely you know what the correct figure is, because that is something that you would have worked out as a city, because he was supposed to leave office today, at least at the end of the July, and now he's been asked to stay on. So either you know or you don't know, and if you don't know, then I'm not sure on what basis you are refuting the media allegations of what that figure is.
Yes. Dr. Masala has been asked to stay on because the contract or the termination contract has not been signed between Dr. Masala and the city. Obviously, whatever the issues around that, I think it just boils down to finalizing that contract. But over and above that, in terms of the figures that you are correct to say he is a public representative and the figures would be made public. But I think that we all need to be patient that the process is concluded, and once that process has been concluded, we will all know the figures to the last rand and cent. And I honestly do not think that it would be appropriate for us to be discussing the rands and cents of what that contract is at this stage, because as we speak, it has not been entered into between the city and Dr. Masala.
But why hasn't it been entered into? Because again, he was supposed to leave office. You've decided to extend that contract. So also there were allegations of Masala contravening the code of conduct for municipal staff members. What did your investigation find in that regard with those allegations relating to Glad Africa Group?
There is obviously an investigation that is being conducted by Audit and Risk, and then that would be concluded. I think it would serve in the next MACO. Again, I don't know the contents and I cannot preempt what it is, and it will obviously have recommendations to say how do we remedy the situation going forward, and as well as everything that is in place to pursue and ensure that if culpability is found, whatever the recommendations are, if it means that monies need to be recovered elsewhere where culpability is established, we would do that. The one thing that the mayor had always maintained is that there are remedies in terms of the MFMA, and we need to ensure that we stick to the prescripts of law, because more often than not, we have found that we would put the cart before the horse, and municipalities and government entities were found wanting. And I tend to agree with the mayor to say, let us follow the remedies in the prescripts of the law and allow law to take its course. And trust me, it goes back to the issue that I raised earlier, that we need to have confidence in our institutions to ensure that we continue to learn from the situations but we can control those and move forward as a country, ensuring that we enforce the rule of law.
Mr. Tau, sometimes elected representatives make it hard to believe, because at what stage is that investigation into Mr. Masala and the contravention of the code of conduct?
That stage, like I said now, to say it is being finalized by Audit and Risk. I do believe that in the next mayoral committee.
So if it is finalized, how come you don't know what was determined and what the appropriate sanction is?
Again, we are going back to that space where we are saying to one another, this report must serve at the mayoral committee, and it must go, because it is a report of council, go to council, and then we can ventilate on the issues. I think one of the things that becomes very, very important, and I would always go back to hammer on the fact that as public representatives and as residents, we need to always ensure that we put the remedies as prescribed in law to ensure that we can get the best possible outcomes, whichever way those outcomes are. But more often than not, if we start putting the cart before the horse and we ventilate on these issues, unfortunately we find ourselves wanting from time to time.
So just finally, can the residents of Tshwane and surrounding areas now be assured that the strike has been halted and it's business as usual as of today?
When we left bargaining council yesterday, some had undertaken to say they would halt the disruptions. We will finalize the deal today. I am confident that the residents of Tshwane will be able to go to work without any interruptions, and businesses will be operating as usual. And we have done everything last night to clean the city as well. So the city center is a place where people can go, and it looks better than it did last night. Obviously, the Tshwane bus service is still halted so that we finalize this issue, but we urge residents to go about their lives as normal as they possibly can. We have put measures in place to restore services fully where the services were interrupted, and we go on further to call on residents that we will announce plans in regions that on Saturday we will go out to also have a massive cleanup of our city and make sure that come Monday, the city of Tshwane is back to its glory.
Well, thank you so much for your time this morning. Acting City of Tshwane Mayor Abel Tau giving us an update on the wage negotiations between the city and the municipal workers and also other matters affecting the capital.